have this account of our Lord raising to life this young man who had died, who was the only son, the only child of this poor widow. And she was a widower, so she was alone. All she had was her son. And what's interesting is that this situation is kind of a foreshadowing, because it will be the very same situation that Our Lady herself will experience. In other words, St. Joseph dies before our Lord begins his public ministry, so she's a widow, and her only son, Jesus, and she's going to lose him, but he is going to resurrect. So in other words, our Lord knew exactly what Our Lady would be going through, how much she would suffer under this, and so he had compassion for this poor woman, but not just because the same situation would happen to Our Lady. You see, when God assumed our human nature and became one of us, he experienced our life, our sufferings and the things that happen in our life. He experienced these things firsthand. So God, because he's God, he knows when we suffer. He feels sorry for us when we suffer. But you see, by becoming man, he not only sees that we are suffering, but he knows exactly how we are suffering, because he himself suffered many similar things that we do. So in other words, in the sufferings of Christ, especially when we think of his crucifixion, many spiritual authors have pointed out that in the sufferings of Christ, whatever we are going through, whether it's psychological, spiritual, emotional, or our relationships, or whatever, we can always relate our present situation to our Lord. And we can learn by his example, especially by his example on the cross. And so it's important that we look to the cross, that we look to Christ as the example for all of us. Now, I wanted to draw to your attention something that comes up again and again with people that I talk to, Catholics that I talk to, and they say that things like, well, God took my father. And I say, no. God did not take your father. So just because your father died, God didn't take your father. But isn't God in charge of everything? Well, yes, he is, but he allows nature to take its course. He gave us free will. We can make choices, and we have to suffer the consequences of our choices or benefit the consequences of our choices. So yes, God is in control of everything, but God allows nature to take its course. And in fact, when we look at the scripture, it mentions that Satan is the ruler of this world. And it's almost like Satan has more control or more influence than God does. And sometimes God allows that to take place, as when we consider, for example, St. Leo XIII. If you recall, he had this vision of Satan being given an extra period of time, some say 75 years, some say 100 years, of greater dominion to exercise his influence, because he was mocking Christ, saying, oh, people are only obedient to when things are going well. And Pope Leo XIII apparently saw the demons of hell descending upon the church and wreaking havoc within the church. And it was after he had this vision that he composed that prayer to St. Michael the Archangel and made it mandatory that everyone recite that prayer after every low mass. So we still do it presently here, but it's important that we realize that we are in this spiritual battle, this spiritual warfare. And yes, there is a lot of corruption in the church if you've been following the news, and things that, were not as bad as they are today. Horrible things happening within the church, and it's just a sign of the influence of Satan. It's also a sign that we are very possibly very close to the end times. So Christ resurrects or raises this young man to life, and he reunites him with his mother. And God wants to unite all of us. He wants all of us to be united, and this is emphasized in today's first reading from Paul's letter to the Corinthians. He says that we are like members of a body. And it's very important that we understand this. We are members of a body. So to take, for example, the cells in my body, They're all part of my body. And every single cell in my body is intended to benefit my body. Now, it's possible I may have some cancer cells or some unhealthy cells or, all kinds of bad cells or cells that are too old and dying and not functioning the way that they should. But they get replaced. And so in the same way that every cell of my body is for the good of my body, so it is with human beings, and especially when we consider the church. You see, each one of us are like cells in the church. And the church has a mission as a whole. And we often don't see it that way. We think we're just individuals acting. But no, there's this communal influence. There's this communal spiritual bond that unites us and makes us more effective. And we know that that is the case because when we are in large crowds, we're more effective in, giving witness to the truths of our faith. Take, for example, the life chain, which is coming up fairly soon. When there's more of us out there, we have a greater impact. When all of us are praying, we have a far greater impact. So the entire church, if all the cells in the church, if all the members of the church were healthy, in other words, the way God wants us to be, the entire church would be much more effective. The entire church wouldn't be so overwhelmed by the influence of the world and oppressed by the influence of the world or corrupted by the influence of the world, but rather the church would be more effective in changing society as a whole. So we can say this about the church, but in many ways we can also say it about all of mankind. All of mankind, we're all united. What we do or fail to do, in one sense, affects everyone around us. You've probably heard that saying that if through 8 people you can get to know every single person in the world. In other words, you probably know someone who knows someone who knows someone who knows someone, and there's 8 steps or 8 people, and you could reach the person on the other side of the world. They say we're so connected, even by these connections. But there's this spiritual connection also that we sometimes fail to see. So, yes, there's this mystical body of Christ, which is the church, and we have this influence. Yes, we can influence others individually, but the whole church influences. The example I give, if everybody were to dress up when they're Sunday best for Sunday, well, it would eventually influence other parishioners and make them realize, oh, I better dress up too. So just to show how influence works, right? So the entire world is also interconnected. And when we think of God's creation, recall how in the book of Genesis, everything that God created was good. Human beings are good. We are good. God gave us free will, which is also a good. But with that free will, we can choose to obey God or not to obey God. And because Adam and Eve choose not to obey God, well, we acquire fallen human nature through our descendancy from Adam and Eve. And it actually inclines us more to be selfish, to be proud, in other words, to sin. But still, we are good. But of course, we can use our freedom to do evil, and it's unfortunate that many people do. But every human being is a good. And there's a movement now to reduce world populations, and I'm not sure if you've heard that. And meanwhile, at the same time, other people are warning the alarm bells because it looks like our populations is going to be drastically reduced because not enough people are reproducing to sustain the level of the population. And there are certain individuals who drastically want to reduce world populations, and I'm sure we've all heard about global warming. And there are many scientists who say, well, there is no real global warming. The Earth's temperature fluctuates. When we look at history, it goes up and down. Some say we're still coming out of the last ice age, and so it's natural that the ice caps would be melting, but there is no real global warming. And they say that, mankind's contribution to carbon emissions or whatever is extremely minimal, that it wouldn't change global temperatures that much. Now, there's many, many reputable scientists saying this. I don't really want to get into a debate about this, but you see, if people want to reduce world populations, they have to push the global warming agenda. Because it makes sense. Oh, okay, we all got to cut down. But it's not just cutting down and, switching to electric cars, which, by the way, some have pointed out are going to leave a far bigger footprint than gas cars. But you see, if you want to reduce world population, promote this global warming thing, and you have a reason for reducing world populations. And so they promote contraceptives. They promote abortion. They promote marriages or unions where they cannot procreate. So in other words, when we see it from this perspective, it all makes sense. And you've probably heard that in various countries in the past, third world countries, they've inoculated people with various things without telling them that they were also sterilizing them so that they can't have any more children. And you've probably heard of the Georgia stones also, and recently it was vandalized, and they couldn't figure out how it was vandalized or who vandalized it. But it seems that it was done on purpose, because after it was vandalized, they removed the Georgia stones. And what are these Georgia stones? Well, you could do research on it, but basically it's kind of like the modern day 10 Commandments put forth by some elites. Now, the person who put up the Georgia stones, or the company or the organization or the group that put it up, it's kind of anonymous. And they want to blame it on the Catholic Church. It's kind of mockery. So in other words, the person who supposedly put it up is R.C. Christian. His initials R.C. Roman Catholic Christian. Of course, it's false, right? And one of I think the main first commandment, or one of the commandments of the Georgia stones, is that world populations should never exceed 500 million. 500 million. In other words, that's their goal, to reduce world population from 8 billion to 5 million. Because then they can control mankind. And we're not going to destroy the planet. So in other words, the whole narrative is that, well, we're overpopulating the world, and we're going to destroy the world. We're going to make it so that it's uninhabitable, and it's going to wipe out mankind. And so we are the saviors who will come forth, and we will reduce world populations by means of our plan to promote contraceptives, sterilizations, and all these things to reduce world populations drastically, and we will save mankind for many generations to come. And you will be able to pat us on the back because we will be the saviors of mankind in the future. Now, this may sound strange to you, but there's a lot of people who are saying these things. And yes, some of these things are debatable, but as I mentioned, it's important to do research. Don't just believe, what you hear. Because the media, the mainstream media, is saying one narrative, and there are many other scientists and doctors who are saying very different things. And people, they don't want to engage in having to think. They just want to believe. They just want to trust. You want to trust that these governments, these health organizations, they're not going to sterilize anybody. Oh, maybe it happened in the third world countries, but it won't happen here. How do you know? How do you know? And when it comes to voting, as I mentioned before, when we think of King Herod who slaughtered the innocents, would you want such a ruler ruling over you? But these politicians who promote and support and fund abortion with our tax money, we vote for these politicians, or some of you vote for these politicians, for mass murderers? Who in their right mind would do such a thing? Oh, but people don't think of it that way. In other words, we've been so desensitized, we've been so accustomed to get used to abortion that, oh, well, it's not that big of a deal. But it is. And this is the whole point I'm trying to make, that every human being that is created is a good. And every human being that comes into this world is going to produce a tremendous amount of good, a tremendous amount of influence in the entire world. And people don't seem to think about it. When it comes time to voting, people are more concerned about some tax cuts, or maybe the government is going to fund their company or business or whatever a little bit more, but they don't care that, well, so many millions get killed every year through abortion. And all the women who suffer the psychological and sometimes physical consequences, they don't care about that. In other words, money is more important than human life. Obviously a wrong attitude. But we need to wake up, and we need to unite in regards to what is really true, especially in regards to our faith. So as I mentioned, when we are united and when we are all healthy cells in this body, then we become effective in spreading the kingdom of God here on earth. I wanted to draw your attention to a movie that is playing in the theaters right now. It's called Life Mark. And it's produced by the same people that produced, Fireproof and War Room. So in other words, very good movies, very Christian movies with a Christian message. And this movie is about a young man who was given up for adoption. In other words, his mother chose not to abort him, but to keep him. Couldn't take care of him herself, so she gave him up for adoption. So it's kind of like about his life, but also her life and his family, and the mother wants to reunite with the son. And the movie depicts this, and it's based on a true story. And so it looks very interesting. I think it's a very emotional type of movie. In other words, if you go see it, bring a handkerchief with you. It's playing in the theaters right now, but it's only playing for 1 week. And the last day of its showing is Thursday. And I don't know all the reasons, but I think part of the reason it's only playing for 1 week is because many of these theaters don't want to show it because it's a pro-life movie. And it's kind of countercultural. It goes against the kind of agenda, they use the movies to kind of manipulate us and to get us to act the way that they want us to. So it's kind of politically incorrect. And so I want to go see this movie to support the movie, to show that people are interested in these kinds of movies, and hopefully so that other people in the public will come and watch these kinds of movies and hopefully be influenced by them. So I'm actually going to go see it tonight. The last day of its showing is on Thursday. So it shows every day at 7 p.m. at Fairview Mall, which is not that far. And I think you can buy tickets online. I'm thinking maybe I'll just show up and hopefully I can get in. I'll come a little bit earlier. But it's showing at 7 p.m. at Fairview Mall, and I'm inviting any of you who are interested to come and join me. We can discuss the movie afterwards if you like. It's kind of like our movie night. We're hoping to have movie night in our parish hall again sometime soon. And so yeah, I encourage you, consider going to see this movie. If not tonight with me, then maybe Wednesday or Thursday. It's only showing at 7 p.m. There's only one showing spot. It's also showing in Pickering if you wanted to go out to Pickering, but it's very limited theaters and very limited showing. So pray for the pro-life cause if you can. Support this movie. It's called Life Mark, and it's supposedly a very good movie. It looks very good anyways. Getting back to what I was saying about, God doesn't take us. God allows nature to take its course. And people get angry that, God took someone, right? How does God feel when we take someone that he created? So God doesn't take us. So nature takes its course. A lot of people, they get angry with God. Why did God take my dad? And, stuff like that. But no, God allows nature to take its course. God gets angry when we destroy his creation, the pinnacle of his creation, which is human life.